Well, welcome back to the news, and Sandy is here with tonight's summary. Sandy.
Yes, so we start with the banking sector, and despite all the happenings in the banking sector, SIC Insurance Company says it has plans of establishing a bank to finance the housing sector. And still on the banking sector elsewhere, South Africa lender Absa Group reported a 4% fall in half-year profits. We have the details in our summaries tonight.
SIC Insurance Company says it is looking at following the footsteps of other insurance firms in developed countries that have branched into mainstream banking after long service. Managing Director of SIC Insurance, Stephen Ojo, said his outfit can start banking operations as soon as it secures the necessary license and approval. The move, he added, will help provide finance for mortgages in the country. Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, has described the decision to collapse some 5 troubled indigenous banks as painful. According to the governor, he had a personal relationship with the managing directors of some of the banks that he had to withdraw licenses from. The governor also noted that he took the drastic action in the larger interest of the banking sector and the economy. Dr. Addison cited the managing director of Royal Bank, Osaya Safoeje, as one person he was very close to but had to take an action against his bank. He said the move comes after a series of infractions, including license acquisition by false pretenses, inadequate capital, high levels of non-performing loans owing to poor liquidity and credit risk management controls, and above all, weak corporate governance structures. South African lender Absa Group reported a 4% fall in half-year profits on Monday, weighed down by costs related to its separation from former parent Barclays. Headline earnings per share came in at 877.8 cents in the 6 months ended June, compared with 917.3 cents a year earlier. Headline EPS is the main profit measure in South Africa that strips out certain one-off items. Absa said earnings included a little over $104 million cost related to its separation from Britain's Barclays, which sold down its controlling stake to just over 10% last year to focus on its home market and the United States. Absa said its retail unit, which launched WhatsApp banking and Samsung Pay earlier this year, grew headline earnings by 4% to 4.2 billion rand. The Dutch brewer Heineken said it is picking up a 40% stake in China Resources Beer. That company is best known as the maker of Snow, which it says is the world's top-selling beer by volume. In return, Heineken is surrendering its China operations to its new partner. China Resources Beer will also get a license to sell Heineken in China and the 0.9% stake in the European brewer. Heineken CEO Jean-Francois van Boxme said in a statement, the deal between the two companies is a winning combination in the growing premium beer segment in China. Heineken, whose other beer brands include Sol, Tiger, and Amstel, has struggled to gain a foothold in the world's largest beer market. Last year, its market share was just 0.5%, according to data from Euromonitor.
So those were our summaries for tonight. More boost for the Chinese market.
Thanks
Heineken
to
is
customers like you.
Oh no, I don't drink alcohol, Daryl.
All right.
So what do we have next?
Oh, well, we have the day's branding stories. Want to get you updated on licenses of about 80 free zones companies will be revoked by the end of the year for flouting the Ghana free zones rules of operation. Now, some of these rules include failure to report their quarterly finances to the authority, as well as a mandatory 70% export to the international market.
The Ghana Free Zones Authority has about 205 companies registered under the Free Zones Act since it was established in 1995. Out of this number, the authority has identified about 80 companies who were licensed to operate as free zone companies but inactive and unfit to carry out business activities as beneficiaries of the free zones. Among many other things, the 80 companies failed to comply with the mandatory 70% export rule and also declare their quarterly finances. According to the Executive Secretary, Michael Bayfi, sanctions will be applied to these companies.
You cannot just decide not to do export and still be a free zones company. You will not be able to submit anything to us. And so when we came, some companies are just on paper like that. They have never done even one export before. Since the incorporation of the business, or since the licensing of that business into free zone, there are some companies that are not doing so well. And so the board, our board, has given us the permission to delist those companies from, so that we will know that, that's why I said that free zones is not just an ordinary concept.
He said the board is interested in attracting local investors into the program to benefit from the numerous initiatives of the concept, adding that the affected companies will be made to reapply as new entities.
That we will delist, you have to go through the process again, because if we delist, it means that we have to come in again as a free zones enterprise by submitting your documents for us to go through and see. Because what they were not doing right, was doing strict application processes by checking to see whether these people who claim to be having a certain amount of money as base capital have it. Whether they claim they have an off-taker in the foreign land, they have it. Whether they have the market. All these things will be said, but you have to find out, and that's what we are doing. So we are trying to check a lot of things to be sure whether these things they tell us are true on paper. Do you understand? So we even send people there to do background check about their strength and their capacity to do business.
Meanwhile, about 18 companies have been licensed to operate as free zone industries since the beginning of the year. The authority says it is looking forward to fix a minimum capital requirement for potential companies who will apply for the program.
We are trying to, one of the key things that we're looking at, because free zones is the only thing that doesn't have a cap. So if you are coming in, you can even come to free zones but with $50,000 and you can still do business. We think that's not right. We are looking at, want to target a certain class of people now. So in the amendment process, one of the key things we are looking at is the capping thing, that we want companies to come with a specific amount of money. So you cannot just say that I have $100,000, I'm coming to invest. Because they do that and they have more money. You heard what the Ghana Nut guy was saying. He started Ghana Nut with less than $100,000. Now he's worth $40 million. How much has Free Zone gotten from that amount?
The Investment Week is an initiative by the authority to woo investors into the program.
Well, if you're a bank customer, brace yourself for some extra scrutiny anytime you carry out transactions with a bank or any financial institution. This is because of the new anti-money laundering and terrorism financing guidelines that have been instituted by the Bank of Ghana together with the Financial Intelligence Center. The guidelines came into effect at the beginning of this month, and joining me with more on this is Joy Business Assistant Editor George Yafe. So George, tell us more about these new guidelines.
But Darryl, let me first give you a background on how we've gotten here. And it basically had to do with the fact that it is believed, and several investigations have supported the fact that a lot of people who are into the drug business are finding some innovative way actually to try and bring in this money into the financial system. Because imagine having about $1 million, Darryl, or even $100,000, and you just cannot keep this money in your house. You want to find a way to get into the financial system, get into a bank, and even all those things, so that you can use it for other formal businesses. And it's come to establish that for most of these guys who are into this whole drug business and even financing terrorism, they're struggling to see how they can get their money into the financial system. And that is why all banks around the world, they are collaborating and finding more innovative ways to try and block these funds from coming into the mainstream financial system, because it's seen as money that is not clean. And that is why all these guidelines have come in place. So they're talking about the fact that you need to know more about whoever is sending money across the financial system. So if today, Darryl, you're sending money to me, I need to establish where's that money coming from. You're sending about $100,000 to me. How did you get that money? If you're transferring that money to me, we want to know your background, the work you do, and how did you even earn that money? And these are some of the guidelines that are trying to put all these things in place. Let's know the person. Let's know where this person is working. Let's know the source of funds. and even who is going to benefit from the transaction. What kind of job is this person in, and what is that person going to use this money for? So you're talking about the fact that put in place an anti-money laundering office, put in place the structures that would actually ensure that the checks are in place, that every transaction that is done from the branch level to the head office, across the borders, all these measures are in place to ensure that only right money are channeled through the financial system, or genuine money.
So essentially, if I walk into a bank, as for instance, to transfer money or to get money from somebody, somebody who's transferred money, I'm going to be asked very personal questions like what I'm going to be using the money for. What else?
The relationship you have with that person. So if it's your wife that is sending you the money, they really want to establish sometimes that is it really coming from your wife or someone else, and how are you going to use that money, Daryl?
Wow, I don't know how I'm going to answer that. But so tell me, is it because there are lapses with the previous guidelines that were there? I mean, what's the push factor?
Let us not get it wrong that most of these commercial banks previously had these measures in place. You can talk about the KYC, but it appears not all the banks were compliant with that. There were instances that some banks were actually charged for flouting the FX rules. There were instances some banks behind the scenes were charged with more of engaging in money laundering. So there's a tendency that if the space is so blurred, people would want to take advantage of that. And that is why these guidelines have been put in place, that everyone must abide by this. We understand that if you fail to employ some of these guidelines, you'll be paying as much as 60,000.
And that is for the banks that fail to comply.
And also, don't just restrict it to the banks. But what I understand is that even a company like Multimedia is supposed to comply with this. So if, for instance, we are not compliant, you're not a financial institution, all right, but through the Media Commission, the Financial Intelligence Center can ask the Media Commission to withdraw your license because as a company, you are not compliant with this anti-money laundering and terrorism financing requirements. And that is what they are seeking to do, that very punitive sanctions for a commercial bank to the extreme. You can lose your license to operate as a commercial bank for flouting some of these laws.
Stringent guidelines, and I'm just wondering to what effect? I mean, how is this beneficial to us as a country?
Daryl, you hear stories about somebody putting certain money in your account. You hear about somebody getting to the banking system and getting some money out. So they want to ensure that only clean money finds its way into the financial system, because these monies are being used to finance terrorism. And you look at the impact on the general economies and even economies in Africa. You look at drug financing. You might think that, oh, somebody just consuming a drug, but the bigger picture is that it's impacting on the workforce of the nation. If you have the youth that are involved in drugs, the implications even on the medical system, where government has to pump a lot of money into rehabilitation and all those things. So government has come to appreciate how big this issue is. So if you are just about putting in place structures to ensure that those who earn money wrongly through drugs and trying to finance terrorism wouldn't find their way into the banking system by setting up a business and using that to finance that particular deals, it won't happen. You will find it difficult. And if a bank, you believe that, oh, I can cream part of this money, the regulators are saying that you are warned, because you will end up losing that license that even allowed you to operate in the banking system or even the financial system to accept those huge monies, $2 million, $3 million, $10 million.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around how I'm going to tell the bank what I'm going to use the money I got for. It's very hard.
I remember Daryl opening my accounts a long time ago, and I remember the bank was asking me that provide your electricity bill, provide your water bill, give me directions to the house that you're staying. And I thought those KYC requirements were too much. But at the end of the day, I got off and I said, listen, take your account.
I get it.
But later you come to appreciate why everybody should be identified by his or her bank account.
All right.
Because it's all about the safety of the system for you and I and even your funds. You hear situations where certain monies have gotten missing in a bank. If the bank hasn't got enough reserves, they cannot even make available your deposit for you, Darren.
Well put. Thanks very much indeed. That was Joy Business Assistant Editor George Yafe breaking the new anti-money laundering guidelines for us. Let's move on now to other stories. The Ghana Institution of Engineering and Department of Civil Engineering is making wants government to prioritize the full implementation of the National Infrastructure Fund to bridge Ghana's gaping infrastructure deficit. This was made known at the Ghana Infrastructure Conference, and we have more in the following report.
The conference saw captains of industry and civil engineers meet with some government officials over policies that best address Ghana's infrastructure challenges. Senior Minister Yao Safomafo urged technical universities to partner closely with government to help introduce reliable research tools for infrastructure development.
Now, what are these polytechnics doing to influence life in the country? Will you as an institution even know in detail? And the answer is big no. We decided that whatever each specializes on should be known by cabinet and by all ministers and by all agencies. So that if there is a need to collaborate in certain sectors, we know where to go. This is a very important missing link in the Ghana system. If you go to Germany, there is so much relationship between industry and the universities that researchers are not taught through by the students. They are given by industry for the academia to go through and do a research on fashion, do a research on this, to do a research on that. We want to bring that here.
On her part, Aviation Minister Cecilia Dapa expressed her outfit's interest to form a tripartite committee with civil engineers on best ways to boost infrastructure in the aviation sector. She spoke to Joy Business.
I have made an appeal to the executives of the Ghana Institute of Engineering that they form a smaller group for us as government to be consulting from time to time. And they have graciously agreed. And this will be very important to us as a pre-project, during the project, and post-project. Yeah.
But beyond this, when everything is said and done, where do you see infrastructure in Ghana in the next few years? After all these, tripartite meetings and
if you look at, for instance, the road sector, we all pass on these roads with our vehicles. They will say a road was constructed maybe in 2015. Now, or 2016, now the road is no more trouble, or the road has a lot of potholes and the cracks, etc. Like the senior minister said, we need to have professionals who will be professionals and protect the integrity of projects.
Well, the conference is also going to be expecting the Ghana Institute of Engineering also launched a special report card. This is the situation as it was last in 2016 in terms of potable water, energy, roads and bridges. Now, this was a ranking back in those days, 2 years ago. And this year, by the end of this year, December, we shall be expecting a new report card which will be measuring these four sectors. That's the telecom sector, the schools, industry, and sanitation, as well as health. All this is put in place in order to bridge the huge infrastructure deficit gap in the country. We shall be exploring all these angles, especially when several stakeholders have expressed key concerns and a specialized interest in this regard. For Joy Business, I'm Charles IATA reporting.
You're watching Business Live. When we come back from this break, a quick conversation around bank assurance, especially in the midst of the banking crisis. Stay with us.
You're welcome back to Business Live, and in our main story for today, we are throwing a spotlight on the insurance sector of the economy. We want to look at some fallout of the current development in the banking sector, the effect on bank assurance, what happens to policyholders' funds, what should the insecure be worried about? To help us address these and other concerns, as we go over to the line to speak to an insurance expert who is also a board member of Downwell Insurance Company Limited, is Larry Kwesi Jiage. Sir, good evening for your time. If you can hear me, if we talk about bank assurance, first of all, what does it mean?
Good evening. Let me make one correction. I cease to be a member of the board of Downwell Insurance.
Very well, thank you, sir.
At the end of June.
Okay.
Yeah. Bank insurance simply is an arrangement between insurance companies and banks, where insurance companies use the banks as channels for distribution of their products. Essentially, the banks just help in distributing the insurance product. They don't do what we call underwriting. That is normally done by the insurance company they are attached to. So essentially, or briefly, that is what is a bank assurance. It's just a distribution arrangement between insurance companies and banks.
Okay, so I think the main aim is to increase the penetration of insurance policies or the insurance sector in the banking sector. But looking at all the happenings in the financial sector now, I mean the banks, do you think it's going to have an effect on bank insurance?
It should not really, because the insurance companies are still there. They are carrying the risks. As I indicated, the banks are only agents in quotes for the insurance companies. So policies that have been sold by the banks would still be in the books of the insurance companies. And note, if you consider the fact that a new entity has been created, they are assuming both the assets and liabilities of the formerly individual banks.
Okay.
And I'm sure they would also pick up the insurance portfolio.
But we do also know that, for instance, Unibank has the Star Assurance, UT had the UT Life, just a point of that. So don't you think, that's why I'm asking whether it's going to have any direct impact?
It should not, because the insurance operations of the banks you mentioned, the institutions you mentioned, are differently regulated. The insurance operations are regulated by the National Insurance Commission. And as a result of that, they are even
All right, thanks so much for your time. We've been speaking to Dr. Larry Jage, who is an insurance expert, on our main story for today. We take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Well, unfortunately, we had to end that interview. But we'll definitely go back to
topic that needs to be revisited.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching tonight's program. My name is Darryl Kwao.
My name is Sandra Islamaphi. We'll see you back here tomorrow.